Chapter 2: Troubles and a Cup of Tea. My siblings and I grew up listening to our father's stories. Sometimes they unfolded around the kitchen table. Other times they filled the quiet while we sat in the car, waiting for my mum to finish shopping. We all heard some of his stories. Sometimes it was just the two of us, and I loved hearing my father talk about his homeland across the sea. He grew up in Belfast, Northern Ireland, during what they simply called the Troubles. It was a long, bitter stretch of conflict that split families, towns, streets, and hearts. There, religion was not only a faith, it shaped identity, postcode, safety, and danger all at once. My father's Catholic upbringing alone divided the world around him. He was one of 10 siblings in a family of 12. Sometimes we would hear fragments of his childhood, always delivered casually, as if he were describing an ordinary way of life. We had heard, through stories, told that when he was a boy, he came home from school and found strangers living in his house. He walked through the front door unnoticed, went upstairs, and opened his bedroom door to find other children playing. They told him that the house was no longer his. For a moment, he believed his entire family had disappeared. Soldiers eventually found him, escorted him away, and reunited him with his parents. Families lost their homes simply because of who they were. Less pleasant accounts were often only touched upon briefly. His brothers once planted a small garden of flowers, vegetables, and nothing more. They used ordinary fertilizer. But in those days, soldiers shifted through homes constantly. When they found it, they grabbed 4 of my uncles, lined them up behind the house, and shoved guns in their faces. Accusations of bomb-making flew like sparks. One wrong twitch, one wrong word, and it could have ended differently. One of my uncles stopped to give directions to a man in a car. He leaned down toward the window, just being helpful. The man suddenly grabbed his head, pulled a knife, and slashed his throat from ear to ear. Somehow, unbelievably, he survived. The cut missed what would have killed him by the narrowest margin. There was never any reason it happened. He had simply stopped to help someone. My dad always shook his head at that one, never making sense of the situation. By the time my father was a young man, that life permeated daily existence. My dad became a Finnish carpenter, a good one. He had been fitting out a shop with shelving, counters, and door frames. But the shop was bombed out twice. He quarreled with undesirable individuals, and back then, that sufficed. Then there was the Sunday incident. Post-bombing, Dad refitted the shop, seeking to accomplish more. Working on Sundays was not customary in that district, not then. News spread, and then several men showed up. Tales circulated concerning repercussions for disregarding such warnings. Severe beatings, punishment kneecappings. The message was simple: don't go back, and my father would not argue. He recounted that portion with nonchalance, presenting job changes like routine life events. That was enough for him. His older brother, serving as a police officer in England, had long urged my father to relocate there. That week, my dad packed what he owned into a small bag and left Northern Ireland behind. He never described the leaving as brave or tragic, just necessary. When he got to England, he started over. He joined the London Fire Brigade and became a firefighter, driving the engines, answering alarms, and loving every part of it. My siblings and I have talked about those stories many times. We have pieced together bits and parts from our parents and some from our Irish uncles, aunties, and granny. Today, people would probably call it terrorism. During that era, people simply termed the conflict the Troubles, implying a fleeting, unavoidable occurrence. Father told those narratives similarly. Plain, as a matter of fact, no dramatics, no self-pity, just how things were. Sometimes it could come across as hard, like nothing rattled him, and feelings were something you sorted out on your own. But that was never really it. He taught us not to moan much about life, refrain from complaining regarding uncontrollable issues. The message was simple. Stick it in ye, my dad would always say. Simply translated, you get on with it, you handle what is in front of you, and you keep moving. My mum brought something different to that world. My mother was born in England. Almost as soon as she graduated from high school, she became a serving police officer. The job meant long days, long nights, and whatever trouble wandered across her path. She usually patrolled with my uncle, who spent half his time teasing her about meeting someone. Mum would just roll her eyes and laugh when he rambled on about his younger brother, the brave, handsome London firefighter. We had heard that story countless times. It never tired, due in part to her constant laughter and my uncle's persistence. One day, she was buying a second-hand car and needed someone to check it over. Naturally, she rang her colleague, my uncle. He stated he was occupied, yet swiftly mentioned his younger brother, visiting from London, could attend in his stead. He assured her he would not mind. The next thing she knew, the good-looking fireman stood at her front door. She watched him as he circled the car she was looking to purchase, studying it with exaggerated seriousness before delivering his verdict. It was rubbish, absolute rubbish. He whisked her off for a test drive in his car instead, proclaiming she deserved to experience a proper car. He declared with complete conviction that he had decided on the spot to sell his car, with a claim that was not entirely true. His confidence was so effortless, so unshaken, that she laughed despite herself. Later, she would admit it was that bold certainty that made her agree to go along with him at all. So off they went. The drive led to a drink, the drink led to conversation, and the conversation somehow led to months later, when they were married. To us kids, it always sounded absurdly simple, like a car, a laugh, and a little serendipity were enough to start a whole family. In the early years, they travelled back and forth to Ireland, so my dad could see his family. But it was hard. Their trips into town involved numerous checkpoints. Soldiers would stop them, search the car, search the bags, and search my parents. Dad always looked suspicious to them because he had short hair from the fire brigade, so they often assumed he was in the army. That meant even more searching than usual. I was only a baby. They would lift me straight out of the pram and search every blanket in case something was hidden. My mum hated it. She would ask to hold me and reach for me, but they insisted on doing it themselves. She said it was intimidating to see men with guns lifting her baby like a parcel. One day in Belfast, my parents were in a department store with me in the stroller, burning time before meeting my granny later. Exploring the record section, they observed the latest LP releases. Afterwards, they crossed the street to meet my grandmother on the other side of town when, abruptly, a bomb exploded behind them at the department store. Mum recounted how despite a bomb exploding, folks were so accustomed that they simply dropped, awaited calm, then rose, cleaned themselves, and continued their routine. My mum recounted the saga. Her voice carried both slight terror but resignation. She'd been rolling me through the street, but by then, explosions had become almost normal. Some blasts were aimed at buildings, but people still got hurt. On a previous occasion, my parents enjoyed a tranquil drive through the countryside. Of course, they had to drive through a checkpoint. Soldiers checked the car, and my dad thought he heard, "Okay, away with you," and waved them on. Dad drove off slowly, picking up a bit of speed, when suddenly they were shouting, loud and urgent, "Stop, or we will shoot." When my father glanced in the mirror, the soldiers had their guns up, ready to use them. He slammed on the brakes, my carry cot slid, and I was hurled frontward, ending up wedged in the backseat footwell. More time, more questions, more drills. My mother was also 6 months pregnant with my younger brother. They recognized that it was time to cease returning to Ireland. It had become too dangerous, too close, too real. That was probably one of the last times my father visited his family home. I remember asking my father what it was all about. He would shrug and say he understood the history and the politics, but that underneath it all, there was greed, power, money, and pride. He felt neither side was good. Most ordinary folks were caught in the middle, longing for peace. I get my sense of adventure from my mother. No question. She was barely 17, straight out of high school, when she signed up as a police officer, back when they still called them WPCs, which stood for Woman Police Constable, the title used in the UK. She threw herself into it. While most people her age were still figuring life out, she was volunteering with CID, the Criminal Investigation Department, the branch that handled serious crime and undercover investigations, tagging along on raids and undercover follow-ups, drug dens, money laundering fronts. She was the plainclothes backup who always volunteered. When she was not working, she was hiking, volunteering, or planning her next small adventure. She loved people, food, culture, smells, sounds, and anything different from home. She instilled in me that yearning for adventure. My father, however, not so much. My father would have been perfectly happy living out his days within a 10-mile radius. He loved camping, yes, but his kind of camping. He adored a caravan site, a kettle on the boil, and a serene corner where he could sip his tea and pretend the rest of the world did not exist. He loved driving, though, probably because it reminded him of his London days, racing through the city, answering emergency calls with sirens and horns blaring. My mum would gently remind him to slow down, to take corners as if he were driving a family car and not a fire engine. My mum loved the exploration of unknown places. Every holiday or vacation was somewhere different. She could still adventure, discover, and be curious, even with 5 kids in tow, while Dad was perfectly content, sitting, sipping tea, and watching us play. Family holidays were always caravanning trips. The 7 of us with the family Labrador would pile into the car with Dad at the wheel, and we would head to different parts of the United Kingdom, such as Scotland, Wales, and England. We would find a farmer's field, rent a spot, pitch our tents, and spend our days building forts, exploring the woods, and running through fields. The freedom of it would enrapture the 5 of us, playing, exploring, and being together. We never went abroad like other families. We did not need to. Everything we needed for adventure and fun was already there, right in front of us. He offered an immediate explanation when I inquired about our extensive caravan travel. My father would always exclaim, "It's free. Free's the best holiday you'll ever get." We still quote him to this day. Anytime a sibling tries something new or says something is wonderful, someone else will repeat, "Because it's free," in my dad's Belfast voice. It has become family scripture. It usually surfaces when we are together as adults, wandering through nature on a long walk that is somewhere between a stroll and a hike, or piling into cars for a countryside drive with no actual destination. None of it costs anything. No tickets, no attractions, just time spent side by side. It reminds us that my parents never believed enjoyment depended on buying or scheduling. We could discover it through dialogue, enjoying the outdoors, and being present for one another without seeking amusement. Without realizing it, that idea shaped how we learned to experience happiness. Life has scattered us across 3 different countries, each of us raising families of our own, and sometimes years pass between seeing each other in person. Yet, when we meet again, it is often those same simple rituals that pull us straight back together. And in our own homes, with our own children, we have each carried pieces of what our parents taught us. Poverty did not define our upbringing. Money was scarce, and many of our clothes and possessions were second-hand. Still, Mum had a way of making everything feel enough, turning hand-me-downs into things that mattered. There was care in it, pride in it. We grew up with gratitude and always had what truly mattered. There were 5 of us kids, each only about 18 months apart, a constant whirlwind that shaped who we would become. Humor was necessary to survive the organized chaos. We hardly ever used names. It was more like a daily head count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? We've got them all. Mum could hunt gifts like a bloodhound on a mission. Car boot sales, church fetes, and local ads. She searched everywhere for whatever her 5 needed. And somehow, she always found it. Her resourcefulness and love for discovery, which I had inherited, made even ordinary gifts feel like treasures. Each holiday season, our home contained toys desired by other children during the late 1980s and early 1990s. Game Boys, glowworms, troll dolls, Action Man and Barbies, Skull Extric, Micro Machines, rollerblades, BMX bikes. One year, she even managed 5 matching Ewok plush toys, lined up perfectly like a tiny furry army. And then there was the motherlode, a massive cardboard box stuffed with Star Wars toys, ships, fighters, characters. The entire galaxy. We 5 had more Star Wars gear than any of our friends. Honestly, it was some of the best Christmases ever. Mum hunted as if it were a sport, had my dad out on late-night runs, and she always came home victorious. We never missed out. Not once. One of my favorite memories was the year I started high school. Dad announced he was taking me to the market. Now, an English market isn't like a neat little American farmer's market. No. This is rows of stalls under tarps, people shouting, half chaos, half charm. You could buy anything there. Dad told me he knew a place that sold brand new school shoes at an amazing price. I was thrilled. New shoes, not hand-me-downs. And then I realized the catch. They were all odd shoes, new and quite functional. They rested within a vast heap of unpaired singles. You needed to locate one left shoe and one matching right shoe. Same style, same color, and roughly the same size. We dug through that pile like archaeologists. Finally, we found a pair, identical in every way, except that one was half a size bigger. No problem, Dad said. The stallholder handed us an insole for free. See, bargain. I walked out of there feeling like I had the flashiest shoes in the entire school. One slightly padded, sure, but you couldn't tell. In truth, the entire experience conjured images from a classic British comedy. That kind of charming, slightly dodgy, bargain hunting energy. We walked back to the car, Dad strutting as if he'd just pulled off the deal of the century. Those were the days that shaped me. Mum pushing the edges, Dad anchoring the center. One pushed me toward the unknown. The other taught me humor during minor misalignments. One particular day, my parents were selling one of our pool behind holiday caravans. They had emptied it, cleaned it, and made it ready. A man came by, looked it over, handed over cash, and drove away. While they worked on the caravan, the 5 of us ran in and out all morning. And of course, my middle sister went missing, the sibling who had a habit of disappearing. My parents handled it with that calm but panicked tone. They lined up the four of us who were visible. 1, 2, 4, 5. Where's number 3, the middle one? And started questioning us. Where had she last been? When was the last time someone saw her? We all assumed she was in the caravan. There was a hideaway storage compartment under the seating area that we children treated like a dare. One kid would enter, then we would close the seat lid and sit on it. Not our finest moments. So naturally, everyone thought she was inside, except that someone had already taken away the caravan. The purchaser had already arrived, paid, hooked it up, and left our house. No one remembered his name, his car, or anything remotely helpful. The police were called. My parents stood in the kitchen, explaining what they knew, what they didn't, repeating timelines, clothing descriptions, and last sightings. Their voices carried a tight edge of restraint, with an effort to stay calm, while fear pressed in from every side. It was no longer just a family worry. It had become official. Just as the panic truly set in, my sister wandered up behind all the commotion, rubbing her head. Her headache led her inside to rest, following a blow to the head from one of us, while she was on the swing set in the back garden. No caravan kidnapping, just a swing set injury and a nap. My parents didn't care about explanations. They were just relieved to see 5 children again. It wasn't even the only time. At a massive fireworks display once, with thousands of people, she vanished and ended up sitting on the lap of a well-known presenter, telling her story on live radio so my parents could come to claim her. Then during a visit to a world playground and zoo park, toward the day's end, Mum noticed her child missing from her camera's view. We found her still on the swing set at the entrance, eyes red. She became lost early in the day and remained stationary, following my father's instructions. If you get lost, don't move. We'll retrace and find you. We grew up locking our bedroom doors out of survival. Not that it ever helped. We each had some magical, slightly criminal ability to break into each other's rooms without leaving a trace. Someone among us mastered lockpicking using a butter knife or hairpins. The others rapidly gained skill. We were basically professional burglars. Only, instead of valuables, we borrowed each other's newly bought t-shirts, gadgets, hair straighteners, chocolate bars, CDs, and anything with even a hint of shine or novelty. One brother even stashed 2 guinea pigs in his locked bedroom, thinking my parents wouldn't notice. He didn't realize they'd bred until one night, a whole tiny family of squealers started chirping out from behind the door like a pocket-sized rebellion. My dad respected our rooms and treated us like adults, even when we weren't there yet, but he was firm about one thing. If we had a problem, we sorted it out ourselves. 5 kids, all close in age, rotating through shared bedrooms, with a few of us older ones finally getting spaces of our own, meant constant negotiation, bartering, and scheming among us. When I became an adult, living outside my childhood home, it was the strangest thing to buy something, set it down, and find it still there, untouched, unborrowed, not mysteriously relocated to someone else's drawer. Until I finally had 4 walls of my own, I didn't realize how deeply I'd been conditioned to share everything, even the things I didn't want to share. Before I left on my first trip overseas, my sisters were already eyeing my bedroom, asking if I was leaving for good. The minute I stepped out the door permanently, one sister struck a deal. The brother could have my room, and she could claim his. That's how it worked. Nothing stayed where you left it, ever. My dad would always say, "Darling, if you want to keep it, take it with you. It won't be here when you get back." And he wasn't wrong. Nothing in our house was sacred. Not with 5 of us. My parents were not perfect, but they did the best they could with what they had, and we never doubted we were loved. Comfort and security were never the point. They gave us something far better: the ability to adapt, to endure with grit, and to carry it all with humor and a sense of happiness.